Koi presents The Monsters of Kampala. A Koi original series written by Joel Gunayaka. Produced by Einem Babazi Miracle. Chapter 8. The Exposé. The next weeks, Sarah's office was buzzing with energy. The photos of the ledger entries were plastered across her desk, each one revealing more damning details about Tadeo's network. It was all there: bribes to government officials, payouts to law enforcement, names of key allies, and every financial trick Tadeo used to keep his empire thriving. Sarah's fingers flew over her keyboard as she compiled the evidence, drafting a story that would shake Kampala to its core. She did her thing as a master of her art. Night and day she kept in her office, secluded from any commotion. Only the unraveling of Tadeo's irrational life occupied her mind. Until one night, she finally put the full stop on the article that would freeze every Ugandan. "This is enough to get him arrested," she said, glancing up at Nyeko with a triumphant glint in her eyes. "We'll publish tonight, and by tomorrow the police won't be able to ignore this." Nyeko felt a surge of satisfaction. After years of waiting, he was finally about to bring justice to his family legacy. When Nyeko made a phone call to Amina, her expression remained tense. "He won't go down without a fight," she said quietly. "He'll come after us." Nyeko's expression hardened. "Let him. We'll be ready." That evening, as Sarah prepared to publish the story, Nyeko received a text. It was from an unknown number, but he recognized the tone immediately. "I know what you've done. If you want to settle this, come alone to the Luzira docks. Midnight." Nyeko clenched his jaw, knowing it's Tadeo and that he would expect him to show up alone. He glanced at Sarah and showed her the message. She looked at him with concern. "Is that Tadeo? You can't go," Sarah said firmly. "This is a trap." "I have to," he replied. "This ends tonight. If I don't face him, he'll never stop coming after us." Sarah touched his arm, her eyes pleading. "Then let me come with you. You don't have to do this alone." Nyeko shook his head. "This is my fight. If I don't come back, make sure the story gets out. Expose everything." Sarah shared a tense look, but she knew better than to argue. Nyeko gave her a final nod and left, disappearing into the night. Nyeko arrived at the docks just before midnight. The air was humid with the scent of fresh water, the moon casting a glow over the shadowed containers and rusted cranes. Tadeo was waiting for him, flanked by two burly bodyguards. "Nyeku," Tadeo said, his voice smooth and mocking. "The lost grandson returns to finish what his grandfather started." Nyeko stepped forward, his eyes cold. "I'm here to end this, Tadeo. You're finished." Tadeo laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the water. "You think a few pages of a ledger can bring me down? I am this city boy. I own the police, the politicians, everything. I could make you disappear tonight and no one would even blink." Nyeko's hand clenched at his side, but he kept his voice steady. "Maybe you're right, but people are starting to wake up. Your empire is rotting from the inside with secrets. Tonight, it all falls apart." With a nod, Tadeo signaled to his guards, who stepped forward. But before they could reach him, the sound of sirens pierced the air. Red and blue lights flashed in the distance, and Tadeo's expression twisted with fury. "What did you do?" he hissed, his eyes blazing. Nyeko allowed himself a small, grim smile. "You wanted me alone," he said, "but I thought it was time we had an audience." The sirens grew louder as police vehicles swarmed the docks, their lights casting long, sharp shadows across the containers and water. Tadeo's guards exchanged panicked looks, their loyalty already wavering. Tadeo's face twisted with fury, and he took a step toward Nyeko. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I've bought every judge, every officer. No one can touch me." "Not anymore, Tadeo," Nyeko replied, his voice cold and steady. "Your empire is exposed, and this is for my grandfather back in 1980. Sarah's story is live as we speak. By tomorrow, everyone in Kampala will know the truth about you. Your allies will scatter, and the government won't be able to ignore it this time." Tadeo's face darkened. He raised a hand, signaling his bodyguards, but they hesitated, uncertain. The tide was turning, and Nyeko could see fear creeping into Tadeo's once untouchable facade. In one last desperate move, Tadeo reached into his coat, pulling out a pistol and aiming it directly at Nyeko. But before he could fire, a voice cut through the chaos. "Drop it, Tadeo!" Officers poured out, guns drawn, their faces set with determination. Nyeko looked over to see Sarah and Amina emerging from the shadows, surrounded by police officers. Amina's gaze was steady, her arms crossed as she stared down the man who had tried to control her life. Tadeo sneered, his grip tightening on the gun. "You fool! Just because that traitor Okello took a bullet, so you create all these theatrics with red and blue lights? You think this is over? The minute I am gone, another monster bigger than you will arise." "You're a fool," he rumbled. "I've survived worse. I'll be out by tomorrow because well, I guess we shall find out soon." Instead, Nyeko stepped forward, his voice calm. "No, Tadeo, this is the end. You've hurt too many people, controlled too much for too long. Justice doesn't belong to you anymore. Before I forget, next time respect my late grandfather, Mr. Okello, because he made you." For a brief moment, Tadeo's composure cracked. In that instant, one of the officers stepped forward, disarming him. The gun clattered to the ground and Tadeo staggered backward, his gaze wild as he realized the extent of his downfall. As the officers cuffed him, Nyeko felt the weight of years lift from his shoulders. He glanced at Amina, who was watching the scene with quiet relief, her expression one of newfound freedom. The following day, Kampala buzzed with the news of Tadeo's arrest and the scandal that had rocked the city's elite. Sarah's story had gone viral, exposing the extent of Tadeo's empire and his network of corruption. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves, and law enforcement was forced to answer questions they'd long avoided. A few weeks after Tadeo's arrest, he faced formal charges in court, accused of violating the Ugandan constitution on 200 separate counts. This marked a significant escalation in his legal troubles, drawing widespread attention to the gravity of the allegations against him. People who once boasted in his defense with ties up their necks fled the country. Businesses closed as many of his accomplices went silent. Meanwhile, Kampala Insight sales shot high as Sarah's Exposé came in series that featured collateral facts of a story that sent chills down the spines of every reader, and to her satisfaction, it was a perfect mark ached in history. Weeks later, Nyeko and Amina were still savoring their victory. Amina's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her brow furrowing. "It's Sarah," she said, worry creeping into her voice. She tapped to open the message and her eyes widened as she scanned the screen. She's found something." Nyeko's stomach tightened. "What is it?" Amina showed him the message on her phone. Sarah's text was brief, but the urgency in her words were clear. "Meet me at the office. There's something I missed. You both need to see this." Monsters of Kampala. Executive producers, Koi Koi Narrations and Creative Nerd Communications.